The number 5 was significant on the 5th day of training camp. We'll talk about why and what it means. Plus, do we buy the current injury comments coming out of the Commanders organization? Finally, how valuable is the Washington Commanders franchise? We'll tell you that, and we'll react to all of it right now on the Locked On Washington Commanders podcast.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, and we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and the WUSA 9 app. Your CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C. has a streaming app that is a game changer for local news and sports in the DMV. Just download the WUSA 9 Plus app now from your Roku or Amazon Fire TV stick. No matter how you're joining us, we thank you for making us your first listen or your first view of the day. I am David Harrison, writer for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, covering your Washington Commanders. And my co-host, as always, is Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst show on the Team 980, which you can find live Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern or anytime, along with this show on the Audacy app. When we're not there or here, we're on Twitter. I am at DHarrison82. Chris is at RussellMania621. And the show is at LO Commanders. That took less than 2 minutes, despite what some comments on YouTube might claim.
Do I smell a combative David Harrison? I like it. Bring
not
me
a 5-minute intro is all I'm saying.
Well, we can make it that if you'd like. Listen,
nobody wants that.
Listen, we've got to do what we got to do, right? We got to do what we got to do. But thanks. Again, we're thanking you for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen, your first view of the day. David, day 5, week 2 of Commanders Training Camp 2022 is in the books, and you were on the scene, boots on the ground, as we like to mention. And you mentioned during the tease 5 was a key word, and that's how we start this episode of LO Commanders, and that is 5 interceptions, 3 for Carson Wentz, 1 each for Taylor Heinicke and Sam Howell. And I guess, the way we would first ask it is, was this just a really bad day, or is this, just a good day for the secondary and the defense? How would you kind of break it down, because you were there to see it?
Yeah, it was amazing. First of all, it was something to behold. I will tell you that. No sooner than was I constructing the tweet to tweet out that Kendall Fuller had secured the first interception of week 2 and of the day, that I look up and Kamren Curl is getting another one. Right. It's amazing. Listen, so the first one, honestly, interceptions are a quarterback stat, period. The ball leaves the quarterback's hands. The interception is on the quarterback. When Carson Wentz threw the ball, as the ball is going through the air, the first thing that went through my mind is, as I'm watching Cam Sims wait for the ball to arrive, is, you want your receiver to close down on that ball. The next thing going through my mind is, oh, look, Kendall Fuller's closing down on the ball. And Kendall Fuller came away with it. And that's why Kendall Fuller came away with it, is because the receiver stopped and sat there, waited for the football to arrive while the defensive back made the play, was aggressive, and went and got the ball. That's something that can be cleaned up in film. It's going to be very simple. They're going to look back at the throw, and they're going to tell Carson, maybe you could have thrown it sooner, a tick sooner. And they're going to tell Cam, hey, next time, take a few steps towards the ball. And that doesn't happen. Worst case scenario, Kendall arrives with the ball, which he's done several times in training camp, by the way, and punches it out, which you would much rather have an incompletion, right, instead of an interception. So that's interception number 1. Interception number 2, very next play. Honestly, I put on Carson trying to make it up. I really do. I think Carson's just like, all right, we're going to move past that with intent, and we're going to come out here and we're going to put together a very solid pass, which is a great method, which is a great mindset, but not so great when you literally just threw an interception, right? This is why you like the quarterback going to the sideline, taking a breather, taking a few minutes to just get it out of his mind, get the adrenaline, because it sucks. You know what I mean? You feel bad, and that spikes some adrenaline, some emotional stress. Let it calm down a little bit before you go back out there. So what happens? He overshoots Cole Turner, who is like 6'14", And Cole jumped, stretched out, and still couldn't touch the football. Like he overshot Cole Turner. But Cam Curl just happened to be in the exact right position that he was in with top coverage over the formation. They were in zone, and Cam Curl made a very nice play, went up in the air, grabbed it, came down both feet, and the defense celebrated. Coach Chris Harris was having a very good day out there on Monday. So those are your first two interceptions. So like when I described that to you, so how do you put emotion into that?
Well, I think it's a really interesting. Well, let me just say this. I think it's a really interesting point that you make about the back-to-back interceptions and not having time in between to cool off, calm down, look at maybe some, the iPad, listen and talk to the coaches, because you don't get that opportunity in practice and in training camp, right? Now, the good part about that is they don't count. It doesn't matter, as opposed to a game, right? The bad part is you don't have that in between, like you said, where you might be able to take a step back and realize, okay, I did this wrong or I did that wrong. So I think that's a really astute and good point. However, that being said, what would worry me is, and I saw this throughout OTAs, and I didn't see it really Saturday, but I saw some other things concern me, as we talked about on our last episode, David. And that is, there are times specific to Carson Wentz. We know what Taylor Heinicke's issues are. We know Sam Howell's a rookie and has a long way to go if he ever gets there. But specific to Carson Wentz, there are times where I have to wonder, and maybe this is early, maybe this is unfair, you tell me, where he tries to do too much, where maybe he tries, hey, I can make this throw because I've got a gun. I can do this. I can make up for this because of whatever reason. I can make this decision. And Ron basically alluded to it after practice, that it's really about decision making, right? And clearly, decision making has been one of Carson Wentz's biggest issues over the last couple of years, in addition to, at times, durability, in addition to, at times, taking too many hits, holding on to the ball too long, too many sacks, so on and so forth. Decision making has been subpar. And that's what concerns me, beyond just, it's day 5 of training camp and they're not in pads. I don't look at a quarterback's performance being affected by not being in pads. I mean, you can say it's day 5 of training camp, right? It was a day back after a day off, so maybe there's a little bit of rust there, but there shouldn't be that rust. He had 4 practices under him, including last time on Saturday. It's not like it was a week ago or anything like that. So I don't know if rust is really something I buy into. It's more Carson's continuing belief or ability or thought that he can pretty much anything because he's got a rocket for an arm, and you can't do that in the NFL.
There's a lot that kind of goes into this whole thing, right? And that's what Ron was trying to focus on. And some of it's coach speak, right? But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't a good day, and it wasn't a good day all around, but especially for the quarterbacks. But
it was a good day for the secondary, right?
It was a great day for the defense. Yeah, absolutely. The third one, so the third Carson Wentz interception, going back to that, honestly, there was a lot of traffic. There was a lot of people on the sidelines. I didn't really see enough to really fully like diagnose it. But from what it looked like to me, it was basically one of those balls that was kind of thrown into a tight area. One dude came away with it. One dude didn't. I don't know if it was a fight issue, if it was like a who wanted it more type of issue. Not quite as bad as some of the other ones. Taylor Heinicke's interception was very, very similar. Honestly, Sam Howell's interception, I almost kind of don't even count because it was a busted play. Like, nobody, like, the ball was snapped and like nobody moved at first. And Sam, you kind of tell, was like, okay, like, we messed that up, so we're going to do it. Like, he kind of stopped, and then like everybody started moving. And so he moved again, and then the whistle started blowing and threw the ball and it was intercepted. So it's like, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, it got intercepted, but I don't know if I would really count that one as an interception. But I mean, honestly, if we're being clear about day 5, and again, this is just day 5, so everybody needs to take it with a huge grain of salt. Sam Howell was the best quarterback out there in day 5, unless you count Cole Kelly, who didn't take any snaps. So that's why he had no interceptions. But Sam Howell honestly looked like probably the best quarterback out there. He had 2 throws. One of them was a great throw, and I want to say it was Cam Sims. Don't quote me on it. Kind of pulled up, and that's why it ended up falling. You know what? It was Kelvin Harmon. He targeted Kelvin Harmon, had him. Kelvin, I don't know what he was going through his mind, but he kind of pulled up a little bit and then tried to reaccelerate when he realized where the ball was going. Made a diving effort for it. Give him all credit for the dive and everything. But I feel like if he doesn't decelerate the way that he did, he probably hits it in stride. And then Sam made another throw over the middle, targeting a tight end, and it was a good throw, except in the NFL linebackers are faster, so the linebacker closed on it, broke it up pretty quickly. At North Carolina, it's a first down and a great play. So Sam's just got to learn how to anticipate that a little bit sooner. But really, I mean, you can see him getting smarter, and that's dangerous for the Commanders depth chart, because as soon as his brain catches up with the NFL game, he's already got the physical talent.
Right. But he still has, I mean, the way you said it, different thing at North Carolina versus the NFL, he still has a long way to go. Again, real quickly, this is all the downside. The benefit, the secondary, which was picked on ruthlessly last year, it was pretty good on Saturday when I was there, and I think you would concur with all of that and more, but it was really good on Monday. So we'll see when the pads come on how Chris Harris's guys respond to that challenge and that difference. Coming up, who was back and who was not for the Commanders on Monday? Again, David was on scene. We will check in on all the injured and banged up guys, including another layer to the Curtis Samuel situation. That's next. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, guys, what are you waiting for? You're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. That's right. You can have two joys. You can listen, watch the Locked On Commanders podcast, and you can have Built Bar Puffs. I highly suggest you do both, and maybe at the same time, you get double the pleasure. And guess what? There's a new flavor of Built Bar Puffs. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. Who doesn't love cookie dough? I love cookie dough. You probably love cookie dough. It's covered in rich chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Again, cookie dough. Chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture. Real cookie dough chunks. Who doesn't love that? Out the hassle of making it, and it's healthy for you. Every Built Bar product, whether it's the puffs or the traditional bars, all the different flavors are healthy and tasty. This one has the cookie dough chunk puffs, only 100 calories and 15 grams of protein. They're low in sugar, low in net carbs. They're so good for you. Replace that breakfast on your way to work in case you want to go to a fast food place. Have a Built Bar Puff. Replace that bowl of chocolate ice cream late at night. Have a Built Bar Puffs. You are going to love them. And what you should do right now is go see our friends at Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order, whatever you want to order, by using the promo code LOCK15 at Built.com. All right, thanks again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and your first view each and every day. All right, David, we got a bunch of injury updates to run through. So on Saturday, we saw Antonio Gibson crank it up a little bit, participating in individual and position unit drills, but not really team drills. But on Monday, that was a little bit of different. Before we get to the rest of the roll call, how did Antonio look in your eyes? Did you notice anything specific? And my belief, and I could be wrong on this, is he did fully participate in all the team 11-on-11 drills. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was out there. He was a full participant. I don't know that he was on every single play or anything like that. Obviously, it was a rotation, but yeah, he was out there. Had a couple drops against Air in the early going. I think that's just rust. You know what I mean? He hasn't been out there really with his guys, so I think that's just rust. I think you chalk it up to that. You could tell that it's been a little bit since he's been on the practice field. And then again, the entire offense was kind of sluggish as well. So when the guys around you were sluggish and you haven't been on the practice field for a little while, I think it's expected that kind of rubs off a little bit. But AG, I mean, you also saw what AG brings to the field. You saw the agility, you saw the ability to get upfield and all those things. So he looks good. Hopefully he continues to feel good, and that hamstring issue doesn't become too big of an issue.
It's interesting because he's had a lot of lower leg issues. This is the first time that I remember, and maybe I'm forgetting one, where it's been kind of an upper leg issue, for lack of a better term, right? Yep. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they use Antonio Gibson going. Mentioned a couple of drops on Air, which is something you don't want to see any drops, but you certainly don't want to see drops on Air. but we know he was a natural receiver at Memphis. So you kind of wonder if they're going to try and preserve his body a little bit more, and also to eliminate potentially so many arms and legs and bodies flying around inside the box, inside the tackles, which led to some of those fumbling issues for AG. You wonder how much they're going to use him as a true running back. Did you see any formation have jumped out at you that would give any indication, or was it pretty much traditionally the same?
I mean, we've definitely seen AG split out. You know what I mean? We've seen him in the slot. We've seen him motion into the slot, out of the slot. Like, there's a lot of movement to this offense, and I don't, obviously, I wasn't on ground last year, so you'd have to speak to if that's a new development or if that's just something that they never really got to because of the limitations of the offense last year. But it's something that I don't remember seeing a lot of on game days, in 2021. So seeing them in camp now, it makes me happy because you have all these weapons and all this versatility. The best way to use them is to shift them around and move them, because it forces the defense to a certain extent to tip their hand, which gives your quarterback a little bit of an advantage before the ball is even snapped. So why not take advantage of those? So seeing a lot of that movement and seeing, AG, JD get reps, split again in the slot, sometimes all the way outside. And I mean, you'd love it if you see Antonio Gibson go out and you got a linebacker against him and you clear that space out. So, so some interesting things. Just, is it going to make it to the field? And there's several factors to that, not just Antonio Gibson, but is it going to make it to the playing field? That's going to be the key. And how quickly the quarterbacks can get on the same page.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they've used certainly him as a receiver in the slot, like you mentioned, out of the backfield in different ways in practices and training camps before. I guess my thing would be I'm expecting it a lot more. Maybe I'm going to be let down. Maybe I'm going to be disappointed. I don't know. All right, Curtis Samuel, speaking of let down and disappointed, again, David, another issue, another problem. And this time, I guess, it's back tightness and hamstring tightness, but at least, hey, let's throw a party. It's nothing related to last year's groin problems, right? Yay!
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's going to get interesting really fast. And I mean, I've already said on this show that I just have kind of a trauma reflex when it comes to Curtis Samuel. If I don't see him on the practice field, my mind immediately goes to, oh no, he's injured again, or he's aggravated again because of last year. Well, it's starting to get back there, and I can tell right now I'm not alone, because this is now 3 practices in a row that we've not seen him on the field. Actually, maybe 4 now. I'm trying to count back, but it's at least 3 practices in a row that he hasn't been in team drills. He hasn't been going full speed. And that's with a day off in between. We were off Sunday, so there's no practice for anybody Sunday. So you're talking 4 days, 5 days that Curtis Samuel hasn't been able to practice at all. And Ron talked about this plan to ramp him up and bring him down, but you're not ramping him up, bringing him down. You're accelerating and then coming to a stop. Like, that's, what I mean? Those are 2 totally different things as far as I'm concerned. And you don't want to not trust what Ron is telling you, but at the same time, like, pads come on tomorrow, and if he's not out there with pads on, it's going to start getting to the point where people are going to, even more than already, talking about, we think this guy is injured, not slowing it down, not gradually building it up. No, like, he's injured.
Well, all right. So a couple of things. I mean, I don't know, but I wouldn't expect him to all of a sudden be out there full throttle just because pads are coming on with all of his various elements. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Number one. Number two, here's the thing that I am having a hard time buying in. Ron keeps saying either at various press conferences with you guys thereafter practices, or with the junkies on 106.7 The Fan, one of the stations that I do work for, last Friday, that Curtis is doing great. Curtis is doing fine. Curtis is going to be okay. We're just backing him down. We're ramping him up. All the different things that you kind of allude. Oh, Al's got a plan. Al, the new head athletic trainer.
Right.
But they keep saying, we made a mistake last year by bringing him back too quick. And I mentioned this a couple of times on Friday and as well on Monday on the radio. And I'm just curious to bounce it off of you. Like, they did not work him that hard in training camp last year. They shut him down from late May all the way until like mid to late August, then started to ramp him up to get him ready for the regular season. And the Chargers, he made it through the first practice of that week, but when after a day off, he came back for the second, he had a setback, and then they had to put him on IR. And I don't know if you remember, before the IR, as the IR stint came to an end, after week 3, a loss in Buffalo, they were going to Atlanta, facing the possibility of 1-3. They wanted to get him on the field. And all of a sudden, Ron's like, oh, no, he practiced full. He's ready to go. I'm going to announce it. He's playing. And he actually was good.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what Ron is saying that they rushed him back for, because I thought it was a mistake then, David. And right away the next week, because he played too many snaps, Curtis Samuel was hurt. So I wonder what they can gain by being extra cautious with him this August versus last August, that, again, that is going to preserve him in the regular season. I don't think there's much of anything.
Yeah, it's tricky because I almost wonder, and again, Ron keeps saying like the groin is fine, and that may be true. Like from an official medical standpoint, maybe the groin is fine, but there are side effects to things, right? When your body gets injured somewhere, and you stop using it, or you have to take a break from like other parts of your body kind of compensate, right? So like I have a back injury, right? I have a back injury, I have a lower back injury. When I suffered that injury, I was healthy before that. I suffered the injury. I went through my rehab, started doing all their stuff. Next thing you know, I have severe neck arthritis. Why do I have severe neck arthritis? Because my neck and my upper body are adjusting and overcompensating for the injury in my lower back. So my lower back is healed as much as it's going to be, but now my neck and my upper back are having issues because of what it's doing. So you look at the groin, where the groin is centrally located. It's not in your core, right? But now he's having issues with his hamstring right below the groin area, and his lower back right above the groin area. So I wonder, and again, this is a non-medical opinion, so I wonder if his body hasn't been overcompensating essentially for a compromised part of his system, and that's why he's having these issues, and if he's going to continue having these issues. But the bottom line is, I mean, we can want to preserve his health all we want, but if he's going to be a part of the team, he's a fast twitch guy. You can't keep that going without work. Like you have to work. And I'm not saying push him on the field before he's ready. I'm just saying that this is where this question is going to start coming in. If he's not on the field, like the pads come on, we still don't see him on the field. Got it. Like, you know what I mean? But eventually the conditioning has to start. You look at a guy like Rob Gronkowski, who came out of retirement in 2020. From a general standpoint, he would have been the fittest guy in most rooms in America because he has stayed in shape that well during his time off. But he still wasn't in football shape. It still took him like 6 weeks of playing and practicing with the Buccaneers before he got into football shape. Curtis Samuel is not practicing and working out for football conditioning, and we're 6 weeks away from the season. I mean, it's one of those things that, the longer he sits out, there's no ramp up period. It's just, we're at a stop right now, and the engine's cooling, and cold muscles are hurt muscles, and all the cliches you want out there. It's going to start getting concerning the longer he's out.
It's hard to get ready to play football when you can't practice. There is no doubt about that. Coming up next, what's Ryan Kerrigan up to? We've had a bunch of news about him in the last few days. And where did the Commanders rank in terms of NFL valuation? That's next on the Locked On Commanders podcast.
All right, guys, final segment here on the Locked On Commanders podcast following the 5th day of Washington Commanders 2022 NFL training camp. Ryan Kerrigan retired. Said something very interesting in his press conference, Chris, that he wanted to coach. And not only does he want to coach, he wants to coach in the NFL, and he wants to coach sooner rather than later. Well, interestingly enough, potential coach Kerrigan was walking the defensive sidelines of practice on Monday, the very next practice day after his retirement.
So it's interesting. On the last episode that we recorded, we had talked about, the possibility of him becoming a coach. And I can't remember if I shared this. You had made mention that John Keim and I, who covered him since the day he walked in, had an off press conference conversation with him, right? A very candid conversation. And I think I can share this. He said, not only do I want to coach, I want to coach now, and I'd like to coach here. Right. Yeah. Meaning Washington, right? He lives here. His family is here. We met his, 3 little daughters, wife, all that stuff. Like, he wanted to go Saturday morning. Like, I think if they would have let him out and coach on Saturday morning, Kerrigan would have. And instead, it took 2 days to work it out and for him to coach ultimately on Monday. Now, where this leads, I don't know. I don't know if Kerrigan wants to work 90, 100 hours a week. But, David, they would be fools, meaning the team, the Commanders, not to say, hey, you know what? You want to work 40 hours? We'll find a way for you to help Chase Young, Montez Sweat, F.A. Obata, and whoever. You want to work 60 hours? Work 60 hours. We got it covered with a defensive line coach in Sam Mills and an assistant defensive line coach in Jeff Scanina. But what could possibly be wrong with a part-time pass rush development coach or a part-time defensive end edge pass rushing consultant or added player that the coach that the players all know and the players all respect because he just did it?
I mean, he could be a quality control coach. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do, and basically, Coach Rivera said that as of right now, he's basically just I call it shadowing, right? He's getting on the job training. So like, it's one thing to say you want to be a coach, and that's what you want to do. It's another thing to do it. He talked about his own process when he retired from the NFL, Coach Rivera, that is, and how it took a little bit of time for him to kind of decide that he wanted to be a coach. So right now, really, they're just letting Ryan. I don't want to call it hang out because I'm sure he's contributing something. I'm sure he is, but like from an official standpoint, he doesn't have an official standpoint. There's no title for Kerrigan right now. He's just kind of there, and they're basically kind of letting him see what it takes to be a coach in the National Football League and really how much work it really encompasses for a couple weeks, and then let him kind of make a decision going from there. But I mean, it doesn't, I don't think when Ron was asked if he was going to come onto the staff, like he didn't, flinch at the idea. So, I mean, I don't know, like maybe by the end of the month here, you got, coaching intern Ryan Kerrigan or assistant coach or quality control coach Ryan Kerrigan. I mean, it's interesting. And honestly, it'd be great. It'd be a great PR move as well. And this team could use all the great PR they can get.
I don't know if they could put him at quality control. Those guys work, again, a ton of hours and they really do the grunt work. I don't know if Ryan wants to do that. My sense is Ryan wanted to dip his toes in the water right away because he wants to get out of his house. And while he loves his kids, he loves football too, and he wants to get back into it. But as I told him again, off on the side, I said, Ryan, you got to really think about this. You got 3 young kids. You don't want to be out of the house from 5 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night. Never see your kids, never see your wife, never have dinner at home, never be able to watch TV, never be able to have a beer and relax except for maybe a Friday night or something like that. Yeah, just be careful. So hopefully he'll get a good taste of it and a good dose. All right, David, wrapping up the show, we got to go through this quickly. Sportico came out with their NFL team by team valuations, and of course, no surprise, the Dallas Cowboys, shocker, number one on that list at $7.64 billion. That's right, billion with a B. Where did the Commanders rank? That's a good question, right? You might be surprised. And David, I guess I would ask you, are you surprised that they're still in the top 10? Number 8 overall at $4.78 billion, just a hair ahead of the Eagles and a couple of spots below the New York Giants.
No, just because the history, you know what I mean? The history, the lineage, and what this team has meant to the league throughout the decades. I'm not fully surprised that it's still in the top 10. I think if, couple more years of what it's currently going through, that valuation might drop. But right now, I think it's kind of a don't blame the car because of the driver type of situation. The car still has value, even if you don't like who's behind the wheel.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think they've gone from number 2 to number 8. That's an unofficial number 2, but I remember not too long ago, 5-6 years ago, somewhere in that range, they were like number 2. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. Maybe it was when I first got on the beat, but either way, they have dropped somewhat precipitously, but still good enough to be in the top 10. All right, you can go check out that whole list at sportico.com. That's going to do it for us on today's edition of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen and view of the day. Now make your second listen and watch the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keeping fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, including Deshaun Watson, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and more. That's right. Check them out. Locked On NFL. We'll be back with another episode after Tuesday's first padded practice. David will be there in person at Command Central. If you want to hop in, 301-615-3577, 301-615-3577, or Locked On Washington Commanders at gmail.com. For David Harrison, that's him, writing for SI.com's Fan Nation. Go make sure you check that out. I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 and the Audacy app. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thank you for joining us right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.